classes. This year we've taken microeconomics, and last year we took macroeconomics with some other business classes. So like Mr. Sturt said, we're talking about supply and demand today. Supply and demand is very useful when you look at different markets for goods, and you use it to find the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity of a market. What that means is, if you have a supply and you have a demand, the supplier are the people that, like companies, that they supply the good, the demands, like people like you, the buyers that demand it. When a market is at its price equilibrium, that means that the suppliers and the demanders, they each have a price and it's equal to each other. So that good is supplied at a price that's good for both suppliers and demanders. And then the same thing with the quantity equilibrium. The quantity is both for the suppliers and the demanders. So if you show this graphically,
You can use this side. You can use either side. You can erase anything up there. But there's a pen on the wedge.
So to show a supply and demand curve graphically, it's basically just like an XY axis. And on the y-axis you have price, and on the y-axis you have quantity. So the way to supply and demand curve is pretty easy. You just draw one line up for supply and one line down. So if this is price and that's quantity, does anyone know why the supply curve would be going up? No. Okay. So the reason the supply curve goes up is when the price, this is like a good in a market. So let's just say this is like the apple, the actual food market. So let's say if the price of an apple is very high, that means the suppliers can supply more of a good because it's at a higher price. So it's easier for them to basically run a company that's profitable if the price of the good's that high. So that's why as price increases, the supply of the good increases. Conversely, the demand curve is sloped downwards because as the price of a good goes down, more and more people can demand. So like I said, when supply and demand meets, this is called the price and quantity of equilibrium. So you label this as P, E, and Q, E. Now normally this will have like numbers attached to it, but it's just a good way to show how the curves are, like the curves correspond. And then later on in the lesson we'll talk about what can affect the supply and demand curves, which will cause shifts that will change the price and quantity equilibrium.
A good way to remember this also is S, sup, and then D,
down. That's good.
Alright, so I will be talking about the basic shifts in the supply curve, which is, of course, sup. Anyways, what could happen here is certain situations cause these curves to shift in the sense where they can go rightwards or leftwards. That's how you classify it. Now, certain things that shift the supply would be like a change in input prices. If it's more expensive for a supplier to make something, they'll supply less of it because they don't have enough money, or they just want to save money. Or it's the quantity of inputs. Now, if more suppliers are supplying something to a market, it will shift it rightward. But if less suppliers are supplying something to a market, it'll go leftward or rightward. Anyways, so let's use the orange market for example. Orange trees are destroyed in a storm. So how does this affect the market? If the orange trees are destroyed in a storm, there's less oranges, right? So the supply of oranges shifts leftward, and that's represented as S2 and an arrow. Now, what you see there is now that this has shifted upwards, there's a new price and a new quantity. The new price falls right here because that's where it intersects the demand curve. The new quantity falls down here. As a result, the prices of oranges have gone up. So because they're more expensive to make, and there's less of them. However, the quantity has gone down because there's also less of them. All right. Now, this is the same concept, orange market and orange juice market. Informed. Okay, sorry about that. My artistry. I don't take art classes. All right, anyways. So now we're in the orange juice market. Oranges are an input to orange juice, correct? I hope everybody knows that. Now, considering that the orange trees are destroyed in the storm, less of them raise an input price. So the input price is higher for oranges. And as a result, the supply shifts leftward again because it's more expensive to get oranges. All right.
Okay, so now talking about the demand curve, things that can affect the demand curve. So always think of demand as like you, the buyers. So what can change the demand curve is if the buyers have a change in income, or if you change the actual numbers of buyers, or consumer tastes. So the first example we have with demand is we have, let's think about the market for t-shirts. So if people make less money, what will happen to the demand for t-shirts? Any ideas?
It'll stay the same.
If people make less money,
Go down.
yes. Well, okay, so, right. But when we talk about supply and demand curve graphs, it's important to not always say like it increases or decreases. It's better to say there's a leftward shift because, or rightward shift, because sometimes like the number could actually increase, but it could be a different shift. So like you said, the demand curve would shift leftward if people make less money, and this would change the price. It would make the price of a good go down. Okay, so that's just a couple examples. Who wants to come to the board and try a question? And then you guys can also try it on your little graphs. Oh, he does right there. He looks excited.
Oh.
Okay.
Get off your big
All right.
man.
Okay.
Show us your economic knowledge.
Hey, Grant, do your supply.
Alright.
Okay. So here, so draw just like a basic XY axis. And then label this one price and this one quantity. And you guys can do this on your
Alright,
paper.
and I taught you guys a little trick in the beginning. I want you guys to try, or want you to try and draw the supply and demand. You remember the little thing I said?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well, which one's which?
Which one's which? Just draw it and then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sup?
That's a good trick. I've never heard that before.
Tech taught us that.
Nice.
So should I write?
Alright, well, wait, what is it? What direction is that going? What direction? Up, and then stop.
So, yeah.
So
just
supply.
you just need to draw S.
Alright.
That one's the
There you go. Alright, big guy.
Okay.
I have a question for you.
The Big Mac one.
Alright, what happens to the price and quantity of Big Macs if a McDonald's meat factory was set on fire by a mob of angry vegans? Well, draw it.
Like, you can think of it yourself, and then everyone can do it on their own.
Yeah,
and then we'll talk
don't feel
about it.
pressured.
So think about it, like the input to the McDonald's Big Mac. You have less of that input now. So like decrease the
Angry vegans took a toll.
input.
Just draw it. Remember, draw it and an arrow.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, now label that S2. And then remember, do you remember price and quantity of equilibrium from the new ones?
So should I write?
Yeah, so like dashed line there up to that point. And that was the original one, so then down there you'd write QE for quantity of equilibrium. And then across you do the same thing and make it PE. And then see how it moved from this point to that point. So then you'd make a dashed line down and then make that Q2 and then that P2. Good job, 1 for 1.
So does
Well done.
everybody understand what he just wrote there?
Mhm.
And how it all worked out? The new intersection of the lines, that's the new price, and that's the new quantity. Alright.
Okay, now we can do a demand example. So who wants to come to the board for a demand example? Yeah. Okay.
There you
yeah,
go,
go,
Kate.
you go.
Good work.
Good job, Kate. Way to volunteer.
Mine wants to.
Okay, so here you can take the marker. Okay, so I'm sure a bunch of you have heard about Fergie's national anthem performance at the All-Star game. So, love me some Fergie, but wasn't that great. So, after Fergie's performance at the All-Star game, we're looking at the market of her ticket sales. So, just draw a basic supply and demand. So, after her performance, do you think there were any changes in the supply or demand for her music?
Demand for her ticket sales went leftward.
Yes.
Okay.
So then just illustrate that with a leftward shift in the demand. You keep it at like the same slope, and then just draw a new one that shifts leftward. And then, yeah, that's D2. And then show the price and equilibrium change. Ooh, ooh, ooh. That's Q2.
Oh, that's Q2.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
QE.
Yeah, exactly. Great job.
Well done.
Another good example.
Perfect. All right, now we're gonna move on, or at least to the new question. What happens to the price and quantity of basketballs if new technology is developed that allows companies to make them at a lower cost? Who wants to come up? I'm almost tempted to make you go again. You all are pointing at each other. You pointed, you already went, you also pointed. You're up. Let's get big guys.
Good try, Jimmy. Good try. Coming up.
Life lesson. Never point at someone when the teacher asks to come up, because then they ask you to come
That
up.
is a great point, Grant. That is.
I learned my lesson. 8th grade, never pointed at anybody. Never was up at the board. Alright. Now, do you want me to reread the question for you? Yes, please. Okay. What happens?
Ooh.
Hey, technically, the
Just
supply and
so you
demand
know,
are
though,
curves,
I was
though.
gonna say,
Technically, yeah.
In a realistic market,
No, don't explain it. That
I
was
know.
confusing.
The supply and demand curves aren't actually straight lines because they're different consumer tastes and everything. But for our examples, we're going to try to keep them in a straight line. But
Basically.
we get writing on the boards a little hard sometimes.
Future economist.
Yes, yes.
Working on it. Alright, now I'll read you the question. So this is the basketball market. What happens to the price and quantity of basketballs if new technology is developed that allows companies to make them at a lower cost?
Can you read the question one more time?
What happens to the price and quantity of basketballs if new technology is developed that allows companies to make them at a lower cost?
Well, the price would go down while the quantity went up.
Well, like, shift the curve, and that's a big point.
Yeah.
One of the biggest lessons you can learn from this is whenever one of those questions is asked, especially if you're trying to pursue an economics class in high school, always draw the graph.
Yeah.
If
and
you don't draw the graph,
If you do everything graphically, it makes everything a lot easier to visually and conceptually
so
understand.
I guess the more appropriate question to ask you is what happens to the supply or demand?
So like, if you're thinking about the basketballs, when you're talking about the technology, you're talking about the people that are making the basketballs.
Yeah.
So it'd be like the suppliers. And now the suppliers have access to technology that allows them to create basketballs at a lesser price.
The supply would go up.
No,
Shift, it would shift
Shift.
rightward
Yeah.
because they're making more basketballs.
at a cheaper price.
So it
this-
goes that way.
Yeah, so you'd have S1 and then you'd show a rightward shift in supply, which you keep your line and then you just shift it out rightward. So it's like that now. So just draw that.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. S2.
I like the curve you got going
And
there.
then show the new price and quantity.
It's kind of fun.
Alright,
Yeah.
so from what you have just drawn us, what can you say about what it affected the price and quantity?
The demand went up while the
No.
No. You showed a shift in the supply. So you
Uh-huh.
showed us the supply curve shifted rightward. So now what happened to the price and quantity? If you look at like PE
Look at-
to
the
P2.
Yeah.
price went down while the quantity went up.
Good.
Exactly.
Good.
There you go.
Hey Grant,
Alright, you
start
have one more
compliments.
question.
We can do the last question before the quiz. Just for you.
Perfect. So now this is where I'm feeling ready about you guys. I think I can take you to the next level.
3 for 3 on examples so far.
Perfect, guys. All right. So now we're going to talk about the price of related goods.